So let's talk about Sauvignon Blanc. This wine is grown in popularity very, very much in the past few years, mostly because of its drinkability. It is absolutely a wine that is very, very, you can pair it with a lot of different things, salads, fish, chicken. I mean, it is just, it's very versatile. You can do it with appetizers, you can do it with desserts. It really kind of is this fresh, young, refreshing wine that goes really, really well with a lot of different things. So where does it come from? So we have different styles that are coming from different parts of the world. Sauvignon Blanc, we grow it here in the United States. It is also coming from France, and it has gotten just this amazing brand new home in New Zealand and in Australia, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Whenever you're thinking about anything with Sauvignon Blanc, think green. That's when we talk about the flavors and any flavor you can think of. That's what I like to go by. So, what I put in the left hand side, green apples, kiwis, limes. It's really, really anything that you can, sometimes even cucumber that comes through a little bit. So, anything that you can think that is green. Even like a fresh cut grass, kind of like that smell that you can think of, that is very, very depictive of a Sauvignon Blanc. So Sauvignon Blanc, it is, there are a couple of things that are very good about it. It is a high yielding grape as well as Chardonnay, but there is something, it's a little bit different in the sense that it's a little bit more protected because it is a late budding and early ripening grape. So late budding helps because if there is any type of late frost, that does not impact this varietal, which is great. Sauvignon Blanc, it thrives in cooler temperatures and it loves sunlight. So it's kind of one of those things where it needs some sort of a breeze. It does really well in coastal areas or any type of areas that have some sort of bodies of water because that typically brings in kind of if there's sunshine, it brings in some cold air as well. So that's really, really good for Sauvignon Blanc. The fermentation for Sauvignon Blanc, it is almost always done in stainless steel unless you want a little bit of a different type of Sauvignon Blanc, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But for the most part, because we want to preserve these really rich and acidic and just like refreshing flavors that we talked about before, a lot of times we do want to make sure that we put it in stainless steel. Now, even if we put it into a barrel for a little bit, you wouldn't put it in a brand new barrel. You wouldn't put it, you don't want that oakiness. You want a little bit of complexity to kind of, combat that acidity that you might get from the lime and the kiwis and all those flavors. But for the most part, if you do that, it's only for a short period of time. And so this is what I said when somebody wants to get a little bit of an interesting profile, what we do is we would put it into a barrel and we would actually rename it and we would call it Fume Blanc. And what this was actually a style of Sauvignon Blanc that was developed by Robert Mondavi, who there's a winery that's named after him. They produce some mainstream wines, but so you can find some inexpensive wines from their wineries, but they actually produce some amazing high-end wines as well. And he is the father of Fume Blanc. Basically, if you know California, we talk about we like big flavors in America, especially coming out of California. And he was looking at Sauvignon Blanc and how to kind of boost the production and especially sales of this particular varietal because it's a high yielding grape and all that. So he's like, well, what if we put it into a barrel for a little bit and then he can get that kind of like smoky flavor like some Sauvignon Blancs do that come out of Pouilly-Fume, which is a French village where they produce Sauvignon Blanc. So he did, and people really liked it. So if you are ever drinking a Fume Blanc, then you are actually drinking a Sauvignon Blanc that has been aged for a little bit in a barrel. And if you are drinking a Pouilly-Fume, which is a village in France, you know that you're drinking Sauvignon Blanc that has a little bit of a smoky flavor. So here are the regions of France that we typically grow Sauvignon Blanc in. Probably the most famous. Poulet Fume, like I said, we've mentioned that before. But you guys, those of you that work in restaurants, you may have heard Sancerre. Sancerre is probably, that's the most famous Sauvignon Blanc that's coming out of France that is sold here in the United States. So if somebody asks for a Sancerre, and they are actually asking for a Sauvignon Blanc. So there you are. And these are just kind of the different types that are coming out of France. It gives you a little bit of a different flavor profile, and these are the ones that are coming from the regions that we've kind of discussed. And as I mentioned before, New Zealand is just this amazing. It's just Sauvignon Blanc has done so well. That's where my favorite Sauvignon Blancs are coming out of. So this is, it's spring. This is, white wine is typically sold in higher quantities in the spring and in the summer than red wine. And we're always looking to kind of spruce up our wine list, especially with this type of wine. So with New Zealand wine, they've really made an amazing splash on the market. I think some of the best ones that I actually really love, they're coming from Marlborough. I can't say that word, sorry. Right here, they're just absolutely amazing. And the reason this region is doing really well is because we talked about that water and that it's very sunny, but it's getting those coastal winds that are also keeping the temperatures down. So that's really, when you look at that, it's surrounded by water, so it does really well. Hawke's Bay right here, I actually enjoy some from there as well. And really the cool thing about New Zealand wines is they typically aren't very expensive. You can find some fantastic ones for like $12, $13, and they are really, really good. This is kind of, we talked about, what you're getting and some notable flavors coming out of Marlborough. We can't say that word, coming out of New Zealand. These are a little bit different from definitely the French Sauvignon Blancs. I feel like the Sauvignon Blancs coming from New Zealand are not as sweet. And I feel like that they have more of a tropical fruitness to them, maybe a little bit more so than even the American ones. But once again, it's still very refreshing. Absolutely. All right, these are just giving you some tasting notes for Sauvignon Blancs. They are, it's a very easily paired wine. It is not complicated. You can pair it with cheeses. You can pair it with salads. You can pair it with, there's even some people that like to pair it with Chinese food. There's certain flavors that are coming out that can do really well with that. So it's something to play around with, and like I said, it's definitely something that some people might look at. And know if you're looking at the nose, and there is one part that I refer to as cat urine. Yes, that is an actual thing. Don't get discouraged by that, but there actually is, and I've drank some of them, which might sound disgusting, but there are some Sauvignon Blancs where you smell them and you're like, that's exactly what that smells like. So, but once again, once you taste it, that smell actually turns into a very, very good flavor, which is odd. But there you are. That's your mini lecture on Sauvignon Blanc.